All right, welcome to this week's episode of The Couch Coaches, where we're talking about everything that's going on in sports and predominantly football, of course, because it is Super Bowl week. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. Who do you think is going to win and why? Brother Bill, I'm going to start with you.
I believe the Philadelphia Eagles will win because they are the more complete team and they have a better defense than Kansas City. And defense wins championships, I believe. Historically, that's been the case, all other things being equal.
All right. Deacon Greg.
Well, I'll agree with Deacon with Brother Bill that the Philadelphia Eagles will win, and mainly because that's been my pick from the beginning. I always thought they were going to win the Super Bowl, but it's going to be a great game. I truly believe it's going to be a great game. I was watching an interview with Patrick Mahomes, and he was just talking about what it will mean to him to win this Super Bowl and the disappointment that he suffered last year, and it's just been on him all year long to get back and to avenge that loss. So they're going to come out and he's going to play, with all his heart and everything. So it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be won in the trenches again. I think Philadelphia's offensive line is going to be able to kind of control that run game. So Philadelphia will be able to run the ball, and then Jalen Hurts will be able to make those timely passes that he's accustomed to doing. So I'm picking the Eagles.
All right, I'm going Chiefs. And not because you guys are both going Eagles. I'm going Chiefs because I can't see Nick Sirianni out coaching Andy Reid, and I think the Chiefs Eagles were phenomenal the first half of the year, and as soon as the team started kind of slowing Jalen down and not letting him run as much, he's not as effective as a quarterback, and I think the Niners had set up. It was a nice little setup of how to keep him kind of contained without overcommitting. And I think the way that the Chiefs defense, who I think has been way underrated these last few games, I think they're going to end up containing him enough that Mahomes will do enough damage on offense that they'll get it. Because everybody's talking about, Sirianni got let go by Reid when he came into Kansas City. Reid got fired by the Eagles. Do you think anybody wants to win this game more than Andy Reid? I mean, he took that team to 4 championships in a row, 5. I mean, it was some insane number. And then they went, yeah, you got to go. And I think nobody wants it more than him. And I think Mahomes last time, the last Super Bowl, it's got to be kind of similar to how Niners fans felt a couple weeks ago. Because when he was he had a foot injury, he had a toe injury, and his whole offensive line was flip-flopped. There's no way they get blown out in that game if his offensive line is healthy. And I do agree, obviously, that losing in the Super Bowl hurts, and losing they lost to the Bengals last year before anybody really knew the Bengals were good, and that's got to sting too. I can't see him not figuring this out. Mahomes he's on like another level of quarterbacking than I've ever seen. He's insane.
I think what will be interesting is to see how Philadelphia responds in the Super Bowl if they fall behind. Because there's something about championship teams in the biggest game when there's an ebb and flow and it doesn't go their way, how they respond. With Kansas City, it said it last week, they had no business beating the Bengals. The Bengals had ample opportunities to win that game, and they just didn't. So credit the Chiefs, right? But with Philadelphia, even with the 2 playoff games against the Giants and against the 49ers, the scores to me, I think what we don't yet know is how good they are in a must-win situation. Like I said, if things don't go their way. And it doesn't have to be even a big play by the Chiefs. I just think we've seen what the Kansas City Chiefs are when they're behind, and they find a way to win. We've seen what Mahomes is when he has to, and he has it, like we talked about last week. But I don't know if we know that with Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't remember with the regular season games, and that's regular season. I mean, here, this is for all the marbles. right? And so I think to your point, you think you might be onto something, Joe. We know what the Chiefs are in Super Bowls because we've seen it 3 times now. This will be the 3rd time, right? And so they're resilient. We're going to find out if the Eagles, if they're behind, if do they panic or do they just stick with who they are and just play the full 60 minutes? So I think to Greg's point, that's what's going to be interesting if this game is close.
I think Jalen Hurts' whole career, but he's been behind the 8th ball. He's been proving himself from college all the way through to where he is now, and I don't think that he gets affected by that. He's an even kill type person, and their identity is to power, run the ball, and just play the methodical ball. That's how they play. So I can't see him even trying to change from who they are, and I can't see him getting rattled because he's been counted out since college. So I just think he's. I don't think that's going to play a part. I think it's going to be won in the trenches, and I just think the Philadelphia's trenches is a little bit more stouter than Kansas City's.
Agreed. Yep.
Remember, he got pulled in the championship game for Tua. Tua had to come in and save the day. There's no Tua's not his backup. But I will say too, like the last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, I was like, I mean, even them getting into the playoffs, I was like, I remember talking to Ezel going, dude, have a nice weekend. You guys are done. And then they kept winning and they would win the next one. And they got the Super Bowl and their offense manhandled the Patriots defense. So, I mean, I would not, if the Eagles win, it's not like, oh my gosh, I couldn't see that coming. I mean, it's not like the Bengals beating the Chiefs last year in the AFC Championship game. I was blown away when that happened.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked, but Brother Billy bring up a good point. They've been front runners the whole time. And granted, they're front runners because their offense is super explosive because they jump and that makes sense. But without that kind of test of what happens when we're down 15, what happens when we're down 14, what happens if we're down 14 early because the Chiefs have just scripted like three drives in a row that just hit before the defense can really adjust. And it's like, how do they adjust to come back?
Wasn't there a couple of games late in the season where they had to scrap back in there? Even when they lost the game that game late in the season, and they said that was a good test for them to be able to experience defeat so they could come back, and kind of right the ship.
It was against the Bears. I think that the Bears might have been the big one where they were down and came back. Is the Bears. That doesn't count. I mean, they beat the Packers. What are the Packers didn't make the playoffs? They murdered the Giants in December, and then they lost to the Cowboys, but Hurts was out, so that doesn't really count. Barely beat the Colts. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's the thing is we haven't seen it. And if we haven't seen it, they haven't seen it. So then how do they, you don't know necessarily how you react, where it'd be different if they had been grinding. I mean, they had a cakewalk into the Super Bowl. They absolutely, and it's not because they played necessarily easy teams. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they manhandled the Giants and they manhandled the Niners.
Because that's who they are. Let me ask you guys this question: what would make you guys think that the Chiefs are going to come in here and run up the score on them early and things when they barely could get by Jacksonville? They barely got by the Bengals. So all of a sudden now they're going to turn into this juggernaut that's going to come in here and run up all these points on this better defense that than they ever faced.
I think this is going to be relatively. No, I don't expect this to be a shootout like the Eagles Patriots game was. I don't expect that because I don't expect that of either defense. Even with Kansas City's defense giving up the 20 points they did to the Bengals, I just look at in Super Bowls, unless there's an injury or something where some team has a decided advantage, teams typically just don't run away because that's how close they are generally. And so I think you're right, Greg. I could easily see this being in the 20s for both teams, if that.
Yeah,
and it just adds up to how many possessions, scoring, how many scores each team is going to get, whether it's touchdowns or field goals. And like I said, turnovers could skew that either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals are a phenomenal offense and a phenomenal defense also. And I think the fact that their defense could go in and kind of corral what that offense can do And I know there's some injuries on the Bengals offensive line, but holding the Bengals to 20 points that's pretty good. And their defense is no joke. And granted, there were opportunities for them to win, and there were opportunities for Jacksonville to beat them the week before. But man, if it's a close game, I mean, Mahomes scores with like 13 seconds left to go in the fourth quarter. Like, if it's close, I don't see how. Mahomes is just he's that dude. I mean, and it sounds kind of stupid because I'm making it sound like it's a video game, but it's like it's Mahomes. It's Mahomes and it's Reed and it's Kelsey who's a giant. And I mean, and maybe the difference in them being able to march down the field is just the fact that they don't really have like a real number one wide receiver. They don't really have they have like a bunch of number three wide receivers. So maybe they're gonna run some routes with like McKinnon or something, or I don't know. It's just it's really hard for me to bet again. Even if the Niners were in the game, it's very hard for me to bet against Mahomes and Reed.
I actually think if Philly is protecting a lead late in the game, they're trying to protect. I would be surprised if they give up the lead, because again, I just put it back on their defense. That front seven, if they are true to form, they put all the pressure on Mahomes and the offense. And all they have to do is just protect their secondary, and the secondary just not make a mistake. So conversely, if Kansas City is trying to protect the lead late, then it's a question of if Philadelphia can still run the ball. I think what's going to be interesting about the Super Bowl is for the team, if they're within a score, whether or not they become predictable and feel like they have to throw the ball in order to move it. Because if I believe in still just try to get first downs, move the ball, run the ball, just because you don't have to panic if there's time on your side. So
I'm going to shock you guys, and I'm going to tell you guys that Philadelphia is going to win by 2 scores. I would say at least by 10 points. They probably. Wow. I would give them. I just mark my words. You guys say they're going to win by at least 10 points. Touchdown and a field goal, or 2 touchdowns. They're going to beat Kansas City, because they're going to come out. I'm telling you, that defense. You guys are talking about Mahomes. He ain't seen that kind of pressure that he's going to be getting on. That defensive line is going to be coming, and those defensive backs that are playing. They got a well-rounded, solid team all the way around. And the offense can beat you in many ways. They're going to run the ball, and then when Jalen Hurts has to pass it, he got receivers out there that he can hit. And I'm telling you, you heard it here. 2 scores.
Okay.
So you're saying at least 10. At least 10.
At least 10.
All right. I heard a stat today. So obviously the Eagles defensive line it's like historically good. Second best defensive line in the league, Kansas City. Second best, or second most sacks. And I think that they're gonna, I don't know, man.
And I wonder why the Eagles are only getting 1.5 points. We know why, because of Vegas, but yeah. Dean Greg, I'm inclined to agree with you. I won't be surprised.
I will.
More than 10. Yeah.
I'll be surprised because I watch Kansas City and I go, they're gonna lose, and then they win. I go, I watch Patrick Mahomes sideways, flinging it this way and under his leg and over his head and complete. I can't. I think
Greg is saying that even that won't be enough.
He's gonna have to do all that because they're gonna be.
But he can. That's the thing is, I mean,
look, I don't doubt you that he can do that. But can his receivers get open when he's doing that? Because them guys are gonna be on him all over the field. He's got Kelsey. Kelsey's gonna be his security blanket. But believe me, they're gonna be on Kelsey too.
Kelsey's gonna be like triple teamed.
That's what I'm saying.
Because that's the guy who's. I mean, as a Raiders guy, when things are tight, he has 13 receptions and 5 touchdowns against you guys.
Yeah. So like you said, and then he got a couple. He got all the rest of the guys are number 3 receivers. So good luck with all that.
Yeah.
I think Philadelphia's defense is surprising people the same way the Baltimore's Ravens defense did the first year they won the Super Bowl. I mean, they were a conservative team offensively, and they just had a lights-out defense, and they just didn't get pressed for almost the whole year. And look what they did to the Giants in the Super Bowl. That was a no doubter.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen so many times where like the high flying offense and Kansas City this year to me is a more balanced offense. The Eagles are like the high flying big offensive team to me in this matchup. And every time you see that team come into the Super Bowl, it gets they have a little extra time. They're paying a little more attention and they shut it down. This feels like and the obviously the Kansas City's defense is not as good as the Broncos. But this kind of feels like that Panthers Broncos Super Bowl where the Panthers are like Cam Newton is just hucking the ball down the field and their defense is lights up and they get into and it's kind of an easy road and they get into the Super Bowl and they figure some stuff out and the offense just doesn't really function. And I see Kansas City figuring out their offense enough where I mean realistically, can you hold Patrick Mahomes to under 20 points? 21.
Yes.
I mean, really?
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes? If he has to, oh man,
yeah. I mean, because you just have to get stops and you have to keep teams out of the end zone because you think you're only going to get so many possessions each quarter. And if Kansas City has to have long drives in order to score, then I think to Greg's point, that Philadelphia defense, there's going to be a point where like I said, I think we'll just have to see, right? But yeah, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if the both scores are in the 20s.
And like I say, Patrick Mahomes don't have Tyreek Hill anymore to bail him out. Like you had before, you couldn't hold him down because all he had to do was get dropped back there and just heave the ball out there, and they can score real fast. They don't score like that anymore. You know, they got to be more methodical down the field, and that defense stay out there and get on you. You only got so many plays.
Yeah. All right. Switching subjects to coaching vacancies, and the one that seems to just be people are turning down interviews. I'm not hearing any rumors of anything. The last rumor I heard, and we're speaking about the Cardinals. The last rumor I heard is the guy that just went to the DC for Minnesota, old Miami coach Flores. The last rumor I heard was that Flores was going to potentially be the head coach, and I loved that because I think Kyler is a total weenie, and Flores is a hard, ASS coach, and I just would love to see that thing explode. It would have been awesome. But he's in Minnesota, and now I hear nothing. So, Deacon Greg, I'm going to start with you. Where did the Cardinals go for a coach?
Oh, that's going to be hard. I'll say this. I'm just going to say it. They need to get an African American coach because they need a job. But a coordinator, get Leftwich, he'll take it. Brian Leftwich to take the job. But really, seriously, it's just like you said. I think the headache is the quarterback position. And the ownership, they're bought into him. They paid him his money, and they're going to ride with him. So you're going to have to get a coach that's going to have to come in and buy into that. And like we said before, if his own college coach couldn't get him to play, and they've been together, and they know the schemes and everything, it's going to be hard for another coach to come in there. So I think that's why the job is not that attractive because it's a package deal with Kyler Murray as a quarterback. And I might just be me, but I even feel that way about, we're not talking about basketball, even the Phoenix Suns just seem like they underachieve. The Cardinals, they always just underachieve the organization for some reason. You're thinking big things from them and stuff, and they never get there. So yeah, I don't think it's something with the whole organization, but a lot of to do with the quarterback.
Brother Bill.
So I think if coaches aren't jumping at leading a team in sports, I think it's either one of two reasons, either because they don't believe they're going to get the support and what they need to be successful from the top, or they don't think they have people underneath them who would follow them. That's the way it is in business, right? I mean, some managers won't take a job if they think they don't have what they need in order to succeed. So if you look at the Cardinals as a leadership, to me, that says something about the ownership and the GM, the folks in the front office. Our head coach has seen something there where they say, you know what, they have to fix that first in order for me to even take a shot at trying to be successful, even with the players I need.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like the ownership doubled down on Kyler, but they don't really like Kyler. It's odd. It's like they doubled down on him and they're like, oh yeah, well we're gonna pay him a ton of money because he scrubbed his social media and whatever. Da, da, da. We're gonna pay him all this money, but then we're gonna add a clause that says don't play video games and you have to actually study the game plan and know what you're doing when you come in. And then he has a mediocre year, gets hurt, and then they fire the coach. The GM's doing whatever he's doing, and that, like the biggest red flag or the first red flag with Kyler for me is Larry Fitzgerald stopped playing. And Larry Fitzgerald is like, he's like elite team player. I mean, that dude changed positions when Arians came in. He went into the slot. Like he is a total NFL professional. And then JJ Watt just happens to retire, and AJ Green happens to retire, and like all these people are. It's like it's Kyler, and they're. I don't. If I were them, I would trade Kyler because he's a complete dumpster fire. And when you have people not even wanting to interview, people that have not been head coaches not wanting to interview, I don't know if we get out of this. If we get past Sunday, and one of those coaches, one of those coordinators, is not the coach of the Cardinals, I don't know what they're going to do because there's nobody left. I mean, they've already been able to interview for the last like month and there's nobody. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like you said, the ownership, the way they signed him and Kyler to the contract, I think everything is like a trend, a fad or something in the NFL. And it was trending towards that mobile quarterback, and he just had that, so they kind of like were tied. Their hands were kind of tied because this is what, the league is kind of turning to right now. And they just hope that it would work out for him. I just think he's just a little bit undersized. I think that's what hurts him more. I heard some reports when he signed that contract. Some of his teammates said he kind of like changed. His whole attitude started to change and everything like that. So I can't really speak to his character or nothing like that. But I think his biggest problem is just his size. He tries hard, but when you're that small, it's hard.
Yeah, see that playoff game last year against the Rams where he refused to like do anything. To me, I was like, oh, this dude doesn't. I mean, and I don't blame him for not wanting to get hit. He's 5'9". He's like a little dude. He's a shortstop or a second baseman or wherever he got drafted as in baseball. Like he's not big. He looks like Mike Gallegos out there throwing the ball around. To me, that was a huge thing. And then he scrubs the social media and all that. And then they sign him and they're like, it's like, I hate you. Here's $150 million. I hate your guts here. It's such an odd move. And then speaking of big fat contracts for running quarterbacks, I keep hearing that Lamar and the Ravens obviously had some weird thing this year. He was supposed to be back in like around Christmas, just kind of wasn't playing. He's limping. I don't, whatever that is, whether it's legitimate or if he's holding out. They're $100 million apart, supposedly. And I'm sure if this is coming from anybody, it's probably coming from the team. They're $100 million apart on their contract. How in the world does that get done when they are, I mean, contracts, there's only like 3 contracts that are over $100 million and they're $100 million apart. Deacon Greg, if you're the Ravens, what do you do?
Well, if you're the Ravens and if you can't sign that contract, you gotta franchise tag them. Is that what they're gonna end up doing? And I think that's gonna cost them $32 million to do that. And they're saying, and if they do that, he's going to hold out for a while, and then he's going to come in and he's going to be a headache, and that ain't going to be good for the organization. But you were saying I was doing a little bit of research. I don't know that figure coming up, but the only way I could see where they're talking about $100 million, we were talking about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation where they signed him to that guaranteed money.
230.
So I think they said that they offered him 250 with 130 guaranteed. He wants the whole 250 guaranteed. And that's where I think that's where they're coming up with that money figure of 100 million because he wants the whole 250 guaranteed. They're offering him 130 million guaranteed. But to your point, the only if you don't come together on that, the only option, they're not going to let him walk, not this year. So they're just going to franchise tag him.
Brother Bill.
Yeah. So if the guaranteed money is the sticking point, then because I would look at whenever there's a negotiation, who has the leverage, who has more leverage. And I think in this situation, Lamar Jackson has more leverage. And I believe that if his agent already hasn't told him that, then he just knows.
You mean his mom?
Yeah, he don't have an agent.
His mom's his agent. His mom has been telling him that since he was 6. You got it. It's all you. You don't have to worry about anything. You're the star.
Wow. Okay. So in that case, right, to Greg's point, if the Ravens options are either franchise tag him and then deal with whatever happens after that, if they can afford, the question is, can they afford to? Can they afford to pay him all the guaranteed money? Because the way I look at it is, not being able to afford to do something is very different from just not wanting to do it. And I don't know enough about them, unfortunately, to know whether or not, what their salary cap situation is, like I said, if they've got it, they just have to be one to write that check. If they don't, then that's a different story. But I would, if I was a betting man, I would believe that the contract would get done, only because it's just at the surface it appears that he has more leverage.
Yeah, I think he does have the leverage. I think the Ravens are a unique team, kind of like the Niners, where they're built, because he's the quarterback, they're a running team. So they would have an opportunity to bring in a comparable quarterback. And it's not going to be Lamar. Lamar is a one of one, completely unique quarterback in this league, like if ever in this league. So you would never replace what he does, but it feels like they're built to bring in a decent quarterback, because there's already built the running game. They have a pretty strong offensive line. They obviously have a great defense. How about just the guaranteed 230, like the dumb Browns for their dumb quarterback is insane to want that. I would trade him. I would just go, pretty please, I hope this works out, but I don't want to pay a quarterback that much money. I don't want him to pay them 25% of our salary cap. I don't want to guarantee $250 million. Ship him to, you know who I think would love him? Panthers. Because I think that owner wants something, because they've just been kind of flat. And I think that dude would pay Lamar a lot of money if they got traded.
I think if they trade him, then they should just give up on being competitive in the AFC North. That's the reality. Because I think, to your point, there's a certain number of quarterbacks who are in different tiers. Top tier quarterback, second tier, then the middle of the pack, and then the quarterback who, why is this quarterback even starting, right? And so the question is Lamar Jackson in the first tier or second tier, right? If he's in that first tier, then, and they're saying they're going to trade that away, then with the makeup of the team offensively, what are they going to get in exchange for him that can still make them competitive with the Bengals and even the Browns, for that matter?
Exactly. I think I
just can't see it.
And one of the sticking points, a little bit, I think I've been hearing on the contract negotiations, is that he's been injured in the last 2 years. He's missed 10 games, and this year I kind of attributed it to that because of the contract. A lot of people were saying that he should have never went to training camp without a contract, and his style of play, that he shouldn't have been on the field. So I think as the season, this is just me, I'm thinking as the season started to wane down, he said that nothing was getting done. Well, I might try to make a point and sit out. And he didn't really push himself to stay on the field. So, but I think they're thinking a little bit is that, well, you were hurt last year. You missed 5 games last year. You missed 5 games this year, and your playing style, it lends itself to not being on the field.
Yeah, and that skill set of his, like insane quickness, that's going to be the first thing that goes from his game. So it's like you can't sign too long of a contract, because how old is he? Like 27, 28, 26? So you sign I could see signing like a 4-year contract or whatever, because that's going to be the first thing that goes is his quickness. And then once his quickness is gone, what is he? He's still got a super strong arm. Is he? I'm sure he's going to develop. He seems like the type of guy, to me, he's like the opposite of Kyler, which is why I like him. I think Kyler's a better, just like natural quarterback, but Lamar's the dude I would want on my team. Like the dude, like he comes in every year. He's better. He's been better every single year, which means he's working on it every single year. Like he's the type of guy I'd want on my team, but just being a full stop, a fully guaranteed contract. It's just like, dude.
But that's what happens when you set the market. When somebody else sets the market, the next guy behind them, he's trying to get, at least that or more.
And the dumbest team, or one of the dumbest teams in the league, set the market. That's like, I bet you every owner was like, of course it was the Browns. Who else would it be besides the Browns? So I think that is it for this week. We're gonna be jumping, obviously, the Super Bowl next week, and we can jump into some basketball stories because the West got pretty interesting yesterday. So talk about Kyrie going to Dallas. You can have two. Maybe Dallas will play with two balls on the court. Maybe that's how they'll make that work.
Before we break this just in, I didn't know this. Getting back to Super Bowl, Kansas City wide receiver McCole Hardman, he was put on injured reserve yesterday. And so he's been scrubbed. So that's one offensive weapon that the Chiefs don't have. So Greg, you said by 10, Eagles by 10. I may up that to Eagles by 14.
They're gonna go get OBJ. Watch, they're gonna go get OBJ. They're gonna get OBJ.
Taylor's getting smarter all the time. I just love the way he never stops learning.
I try.
All right, we will see. All right, we will see you guys next week. Thank you.
All right.